Elex 2 is the aptly named sequel to Elex, an open-world action-adventure RPG from German developer Piranha Bytes, who were previously known for their work on the Gothic and Risen trilogies. As a series, Elex blends science fiction, fantasy, and post-apocalypse themes by way of a magical substance known as Elex, which was on a comet that struck the fictional planet of Magellan some 160 years ago, leaving the survivors to band together into different factions that would harness the power of Elex in different ways, some using it to fuel advanced technologies, others using it to draw inert magical energy from the earth, and others using it as a psychoactive drug to stimulate their physical and mental prowess. You play as Jax, a former Alb commander who, in the first game, was betrayed by his order and worked to stop the Alb's destructive conquest to harvest all Elex from the planet. Elex 2 picks up several years after the first game's conclusion and once again sees Jax working to unite the factions to fight off an enemy threat, this time in the form of an alien invasion force who actually sent the comet to Magellan as a means to terraform the planet in advance of their arrival. Just like Elex 1, the core gameplay revolves around exploring a relatively large map searching for loot and hidden secrets, battling enemies and completing side quests, interacting with factions and companion characters to build your reputation with them, and upgrading your character with stronger equipment and new skills as you level up, all while progressing through a main questline that spans 4 chapters of storytelling. For the most part, Elex 2 operates like a typical sequel by sticking to the familiar formula of the first game while attempting to polish and improve upon some of its jagged rough edges. Many of these improvements are a welcome addition that add newfound fluidity and expanded functionality to an already satisfying, if a bit janky gameplay experience, but unfortunately not all of the changes are uniform improvements. In fact, some of them could be seen as straight downgrades compared to how similar things were handled in the first game, while other choices come off as a bit puzzling, to say the least. After all, a sequel is supposed to be an opportunity to provide the same type of gameplay experience in a new and improved package. Since the bulk of the groundwork should have already been laid in the first game, the developer should have more opportunity to focus on the finer details they might not have had the time or resources to work on the first time around, which is arguably where Elex 1 struggled the most. Despite being pretty solid in many regards with a lot of impressive heart and ambition, it was still marred by lackluster technical execution as a result of the developer's limited budget and manpower. It's like they had a good game on their hands but just needed more time to flesh out their ideas, playtest everything, and polish it up. So for Elex 2, it seemed like all they really needed to do was copy over everything from Elex 1 and just fix or otherwise tweak the stuff that didn't work right, expand on the gameplay with some new mechanics and features, and then put it all in a new map and story, and I'm sure many people would have been happy with the end result. After all, that's basically what they did with Gothic 2, which is widely considered to be their best game ever created, and certainly their best sequel. A big part of the reason that game worked so well is that it was a direct extension of Gothic 1 that built directly on top of the successful foundation of the first game, while still retaining pretty much everything that made the original Gothic so beloved in the first place. That's not quite what they did with Elex 2. It's still basically the same gameplay experience, and indeed it sticks much closer to the established formula of its predecessor than, say, Gothic 3 or Risen 2, but instead of building off of the existing foundation of Elex 1, like remodeling or renovating an existing house, it's like they built an entirely new house from scratch with blueprints that were retroactively modeled after the original one. Nearly every design element has been completely recreated with some kind of subtle or, in some cases, major twist put on it, and with every new recreation and new twist comes new opportunity to mess something up or stray from the tenets that made the first game so compelling in the first place, while also leaving them with, I presume, less time to work on fleshing everything out properly and fine-tuning the smaller details, which are some of the main areas of weakness that Elex 2 needed to improve upon from the first game, which they didn't entirely deliver on with the sequel. To be fair, Elex 2 makes tremendous improvements to many critical aspects that turned many people off from the first game. Namely, the new movement scheme and jetpack controls make simply moving around the world a lot less cumbersome and awkward, and therefore much more satisfying this time around. And the new changes to the combat system with regards to its animations, hitboxes, and auto-targeting systems make it feel much more responsive and a lot less clunky than it did in Elex 1. This is, of course, in addition to other changes like improved functionality with different interface options and a much less punishing difficulty curve, all of which combine to make Elex 2 feel decidedly less janky and more accessible than its predecessor. Other things like the faction quests and the way the game reacts to your actions are really well done, being some of the best that have ever been done in a Piranha Bytes game. But then it seems like Elex 2 also lost a little bit of the first game's creative spark along the way, where the sequel doesn't seem to have as much charm or personality as the first one. A lot of this can be seen with the way certain mechanics have been streamlined, thus eliminating some of the first game's mechanical depth and fun variety of content. But it also extends to the much more homogeneous world design and the fact that so many recurring elements from the first game, like certain landscapes, factions, and characters, are all decidedly less interesting than they were originally. This, combined with a really lackluster main quest line, some nonsensical storytelling, and Piranha Bytes' usual lack of polish, leave Elex 2 feeling like more of a mixed bag of good, bad, and mediocre, where the biggest disappointment isn't so much the game itself, but all the missed potential it had to improve on the original game and finally grant us another Piranha Bytes sequel that would compete with Gothic 2. Elex 2 is no Gothic 2, unfortunately, but by the same token it's no Gothic 3 or Risen 2 either, so ultimately I can't be too upset about it, but it's still disappointing that it's still not as good as it could have or maybe should have been.
Hey everyone, this is Nick, aka the Nocturnal Rambler, breaking the script and the fourth wall to update you on my progress putting together my Elex 2 review and to give a bit of an overview of what projects and videos I have planned next. So what you just saw was the intro sequence for my upcoming review, which I'm expecting to be around 3 hours long once everything is complete. I didn't intentionally set out to make such a long review, but it turns out I have very mixed and complicated opinions on the game, and there's a lot to talk about with regards to how it holds up as a sequel to Elex and compared to previous Piranha Bytes games in general. So the final review wound up being much longer than I originally anticipated, and thus took much longer to write because of that length, in addition to other compounding factors like being really busy in real life, losing my master copy of the draft near the very end, and not having a lot of motivation to actually work on the review in the first place. But at long last, I can finally say I'm at the final stages of production and should have the full video review out soon. I'm editing the review in sections and publishing each completed section on Patreon once I finish them. I've already posted the completed sections for the story and quests, which are about 30 minutes each, and will be publishing the sections on role-playing, progression, factions, combat, world design and exploration, and technical stuff in the coming weeks. It's probably going to take me another 6 or 8 weeks minimum before I can finish everything, at which point I'll splice all the sections together into one video, which is the version that will go public with ad revenue. In the meantime, if you'd like to stay more updated on my progress and preview each section as it's completed, in addition to throwing me a few bucks as a sign of support, then I'd encourage you to sign up on my Patreon page, where there's already over an hour of my completed Elex 2 review available for early viewing, with still more to come. The full review script is also available for full viewing if you just want to read through it in advance of the video sections coming out. As an added bonus, everyone who signs up between now and when the full review gets published will get credit in the final video, regardless of what level you pledge at and even if you delete your pledge before then. In other news, I've got several videos lined up that I want to work on once I finish this review. Back when I was playing The Witcher 3, I wrote a Patreon exclusive article for some of my favorite and least favorite quests in that game, which I want to make into a video since the article is already written and the footage should be pretty straightforward to pull, so it should be a pretty quick and easy video to put together. I bought Elden Ring over the summer with the intent to start playing it once I finish my Elex 2 review, so that's probably what I'll move to next, with the intent to make a review once I've finished my playthrough. I may do a full Let's Play if there's enough interest, but I'd kinda prefer to just focus on recording footage for the sake of the review to make the review process go a little faster. I also want to go back and finish Chronicles of Martana, which I put on pause to cover Elex 2, but I feel like I need to take a little break from Piranha Bytes games since I've spent almost 2 years exclusively covering Risen 2, Elex 2, and Chapter 1 of Arkelos. So I need a little something different to cleanse my palate before getting back into another Piranha Bytes-like game. And since there's apparently an updated 2.0 version in the works, it might just make sense for me to wait to play the updated game anyway. Some other ideas I've been kicking around for non-review videos include a possible beginner's guide to Gothic 1 in the same style that I did for the Elex games, with in-depth but spoiler-free tips and strategies to help explain some of the game's trickier aspects to new players, and another video detailing why I think Gothic 1's weird controls are actually much better than their reputation. A lot of people are quick to criticize the controls in that game, which are pretty unusual to be fair, but I found them to be really intuitive and immersive once I got the hang of everything, and thus think they deserve a little more credit than they're given. I also recently started to dabble with a couple of touchpad controllers like the Steam controller and the Darkwalker shotpad, both of which I found to be much more enjoyable to use as a longtime PC gamer than standard dual-stick controllers. There are some notable pros and cons to each device that I thought might be worthwhile to cover in a sort of comparison video for prospective buyers in the market for something a little different from a standard controller. In the meantime, I've been playing a fair amount of Stardew Valley on my mobile phone as a way to kill time while away from home. It's not something I would normally be drawn to, but I tried it on a whim and found myself quite enamored with it. Naturally, I have some things to say about it that I think are interesting, so I'd like to put together some sort of review for Stardew Valley when I get to a suitable point in my playthrough. So that's some of the stuff I have lined up to work on in the near future. I'll plan to post polls on Patreon once I finish my Elex 2 review to gauge interest in which of these videos are more desirable, and will try to prioritize production accordingly, so that's yet another benefit from signing up on my Patreon. And that should do it for this teaser/project update video. If you're a patron, then be on the lookout for more completed sections to be posted there in the coming weeks, in addition to the ones that are already up. And for everyone else, hang tight a little while longer for the completed video to go public before the end of the year. I'm sorry it's been taking me this long, but hopefully the end result will have been worth the wait.